Preparations underway for what is believed to be a pandemic that will hit in the next 2 weeks. We'll get into everything that's going on, including whether or not the primary will actually happen for the Democrats today in Ohio, a couple of other states in the mix as well, and also whatever happened to the federal government's case from the DOJ against the Russian troll farms. I've got an update for you on that and much more coming up.
It seems to me that if we do a really good job, we'll not only hold the death down to a level that is much lower than the other way, had we not done a good job. But people are talking about July, August, something like that. So it could be right in that period of time where it washes through. Other people don't like that term, but where it washes through.
So is this the new normal until the height of the summer?
We'll see what happens, but they think August, could be July, could be longer than that. But I've asked that question many, many times.
If in 2 weeks, miraculously, everything is fine, I'll reopen every school in New York in 2 weeks. That's what we're planning. We will have specific guidelines that we announced this afternoon.
Welcome to the Buck Sexton Show, everybody. Continuing with our Freedom HUD in the time of the coronavirus, Wuhan virus pandemic, trying to get a sense of how long this is going to last, what preparations we should make. As I've been saying, I'm giving it the 15 days that the CDC is asking for. And you had really, I think, in those two sound bites, one was, of course, Donald Trump. The other was the governor of New York, Governor Cuomo. The full scope of what we're realistically facing. It could be that within a couple of weeks, it seems like this is largely under control, though he did describe that as a miracle. It could also be that we are making these provisions, that we're taking all these very drastic, very radical steps all the way into the summer. I had been thinking June. The president said July if we do a good job. Nobody really knows at this point. Everybody is very, very concerned. And as we enter this phase where we're really going to be dealing with this, we all find ourselves thinking about what's going to come next. Never before in the modern history of the United States, or when we've had a post-World War II modern economy, have we dealt with anything like this. We've never had a situation where we voluntarily decide to just stop doing a whole lot of stuff. Stop making things, stop opening stores. Economic activity. I mean, economics is really just a system for human decision-making in the commercial realm. That's what economics are. It is activity by definition, right? You do not have inactivity as something that everyone's concerned with. So we're entering a phase here unlike anything else we've ever seen before. And it's tough out there. I mean, I'm coming to you from New York City. I know a lot of you are in places around the country where there are far fewer, or in some cases, maybe your county has 0 cases of this so far. So I'm bringing you the perspective of somebody who's in the place that is expected to be, in aggregate numbers, hit the hardest and have perhaps the greatest disruption of day-to-day life. So just remember that as we're going through this. You know, sometimes different areas of the country talk about disaster preparedness, and if they're places that are frequently hit by hurricanes, or if they're places that are often subject to tornadoes, they have a very different view on this than people that have never dealt with, right? Earthquakes in California have a very different resonance than earthquakes in Maine. I don't think Maine's been hit by a bad earthquake in a long time. I could be wrong. So we have a bunch of things to get to today, including why the CDC failed us in the early phase of this. Because, all the testing delays, you know what that was? Federal bureaucracy and regulation. I'll tell you about that. Also, the DOJ decided, the Mueller team, the prosecutors from the DOJ assigned to the Mueller team, they decided to dump during the noise, I call it, the whole case of Russian troll farmers. Remember, they were going to bring this federal indictment, and then Russian counsel actually showed up, which surprised them, because this was the whole interference in the election, the huge scheme by the Russians, and over a dozen indictments, I think it was, of Russians who were involved in this in Russia. They just dropped the whole thing right now. Does anyone think that that was an accident? Does anyone think that they dropped this for any reason right now, other than they know that no one's really going to care? We'll spend a bit of time on that. And then also you have Tom Brady. Top of the Drudge Report right now. Big story. Tom Brady is not going to go back to the Patriots. He's going to go play for someone else. This is just all of us, and I get this. This is all of us. And producer Mark can weigh in on the reality of this as somebody who knows more about Tom Brady than me. We just want some story to talk about because we don't have sports now. And we can't go to movies, and we can't go to parties, and we can't go to Disney World, and we can't. So we just want something else to talk about. And so this Tom Brady decision, that would usually be a mostly ESPN story or, the sports networks out there. It's getting a lot more focus than it usually would because just something other than Corona. And to that end, my friends, I want to do a good job here of balancing out how much we talk about coronavirus, Wuhan virus. I'm sorry. See, I've heard so much coronavirus that now it seeps into my mind. But I want to make sure that we discuss other things, too. I want to tell you everything you need to know about this at the federal level, from government action, where I think this is all heading. And that's necessary at this point. But also, I know you guys are my lifeline. You are the people that, you are my end run on social distancing. I don't keep my distance from any of you. I get to talk to all of you every day. So that really is more meaningful in some ways now than it's ever been before. I don't see anybody else. I don't see my family. I don't see my friends. I do have my parents' French bulldog with me, Tallulah, who is very cute, but very French. He's very stubborn. Not always easy to deal with. She makes demands. But that's it. I mean, here in New York City, we're being told essentially that we should act as if we're all in quarantine. We should act as if we have come into contact with this, even if we have no specific reason to think that that has happened. And so that is really changing the city pretty dramatically. I called a couple of restaurants last night because I wanted to do what I had said I was, or at least I've said it. I think I said it on WOR. I called a couple of restaurants last night and wanted to get I wanted to get a gift certificate so that I could tell them, hey guys, I'm going to, here's some money now. Here's $100, $150, whatever it is. And I'm not going to use this again. And I'm not going to use this rather until at least July, maybe September. But smaller places, the corporate places may be able to hold out a bit longer. I don't think Chipotle is going out of business anytime soon. Right. But places that are sole proprietorships, where they're owned by one person or by a family, those places have very high rents here in New York. I tried to call some last night, already closed, not even staying open for this, because if they don't have a robust delivery business, it's very hard to weather this storm. And there's also this back and forth that you're going to see between wonderful, kind, inspiring stories. Right now there's all this circulating on social media of people who are in Italy, in Rome, in Milan. People are out on their balconies because in Italy this is very, I'm sure if you've never been, you know what I'm talking about. And they're singing. Whole neighborhoods are going out to their windows and singing together. And this is the heartwarming. This makes you feel like, okay, we're going to be all right. But then there's the other side of this, too. Right now, we're already seeing the panic buying. We're seeing people hoarding. People are hoarding N95 masks. They're hoarding toilet paper, red meat, pasta. There are things, eggs. These are things that people are terrified they're not going to have. And what happens if we do start to have real economic dislocation from this? We're already going to suffer pain, but I mean in our food supply. What happens if all of a sudden we're not? Now, farmers say they're going to work, and God bless our farmers. They're not shutting down for coronavirus no matter what. But in the delivery system, especially for very crowded urban areas, is a more precarious thing than a lot of people realize. Most major grocery stores will get a series of deliveries throughout the day. And that's how they stay. That's how those shelves stay stocked, and that's how you've got the stuff you want. If we have enough of a problem here and the quarantine becomes stringent enough and people need to stay home to take care of their kids, what happens if our truck drivers have got to stay home because, they've got kids or they got a family member they're worried about, they've got things they've got to do too. We don't know how this is going to play out in that regard. So, look, I'm not gloom and doom here, folks. We're going to be all right, team. We're going to get through it. Every day I got to say that. It's important for me to be able to say it, for me to hear myself saying it. But also, I think it's important that we keep that in mind as we look at all the different policies and everything that's going on right now. This is the most uncertain moment in some ways, at least in terms of the disease spread. This is where we have to just sit and wait. It reminds me a little bit about how there's going to be, there's going to be some days ahead that are like the first days of a battle. That's what it's going to feel like, because there's going to be numbers that come in, assuming that the projections are correct. I mean, I know the New York projections very well because it's really being done state by state. And you're also seeing states have a larger role in this. States got involved after 9/11 with counterterrorism, fusion centers. And on quarantine, state and local governments are very much on the front line and doing things that matter, whether they're good things or bad things. They're doing things that really do affect your life. And that's why, so I'm focused on New York because I'm in New York. I'm also seeing what's going on in other states as much as I can. But here, they're seeing about a 20% hospitalization rate. About 20% of the people that have been confirmed to have coronavirus. Now, that doesn't mean that 20% of people are going to get hospitalized, but 20% of the people who took a test because they had the symptoms that made them think they have coronavirus, which is probably a small fraction of those who actually have Wuhan virus, actually gotten this. But if you have a 20% hospitalization rate just based on the established infection number and the rate that it's going up right now, there are very real concerns that you're just going to have people that are going to emergency rooms and they literally physically do not have the ventilators necessary to keep these people alive. That's the nightmare scenario. That's what they keep talking about, flattening out the curve. And we're all becoming familiar with this verbiage now, things we'd never even heard of before, flattening out the curve being one of them. We all know more about disease than I think we've ever known before. I read about it every day, every night. I'm reading books on it. I'm reading news articles, feverishly. Probably the wrong word to use, but furiously. There we go. But we're all trying to figure out as much as we can about how this is going to play out. Trump yesterday said it was bad. Those of you, and I respect that, we have differing opinions on a whole host of things, but those of you who last week were writing me to say, Buck, it's not going to be that big a deal. I hope you're right. You could be right, but we can't take the risk of not thinking it's a big deal for at least the next couple of weeks, because the way that this played out in Italy is something we have to avoid here. Because it'll play out on a much larger, we have a population that's 5 times plus the size of Italy. It'll play out on a scale here that will be jaw-dropping and horrifying. So I'm willing to sacrifice 2 weeks of economic activity so that we don't have 50,000 dead in a month from this disease. I think that's, by the way, we're going to start having some very difficult societal conversations, greater society conversations about what really the trade-offs that we're willing to make are. No one's going there quite yet, but we do lose, and I know everyone yells at everyone for bringing up the flu, but that's our experience with what is really seasonal and endemic disease, endemic within the people, disease that keeps popping up in the same population, right? Pandemic, all the people. Epidemic, on the people. All important things to know these days. All come from ancient Greece. Why from ancient Greece? Well, Hippocrates was the first one who wrote about what we think was either a flu or it might have been typhoid, can't really tell, or a combination of both. But that's when we first had these terms, pandemic and epidemic. So it stretches back to, I think, the 4th or 5th century BC. So, my friends, we are going to work through all this again together. today, as we always do. It is an honor that you come to me at this time. Give me your time. Lend me your ears. I do appreciate it. You are my social life. You know, there's all this social distancing right now. Team Buck, you guys are it for me. I mean, I can call people and FaceTime people, but this actually gives me the feeling of connection to the people in this country, to my fellow Americans that I care about. So that's one thing that I'm deeply grateful for. And as you can see, we're all set up. So as long as the internet and the electricity stays on, this show stays on. So we're going to be good to go. I'm going to go through some of what was said in a press conference this morning by the president, as well as a press conference by Cuomo that I thought was pretty good. And we'll get into some other things. I'll tell you about this Russian troll farm story, which I think is really, really interesting. Also why there's been a delay in testing. So we've got a jam-packed show, no doubt about it, as we always do. And I may, although you'll only see this if you watch on Pluto TV, channel 248 the first, I may have a special guest join me for roll call today. We'll see. You might be able to hear her little snorts and her little sneezes, because she does sneeze sometimes. But we'll see about that. I've got plans. Stay with me.
There will be no more gatherings of 50-plus people. So if you were hoping to plan a graduation party, you can't do it in the state of New York. You can't go do it in the state of New Jersey, and you can't do it in the state of Connecticut. Casinos, we all have casinos. If I close my casinos, but New Jersey keeps their casinos open, we're going to have the same problem. All casinos will be closed effective 8 p.m. tonight, and they will stay closed until further notice. On all these closings, they are all until further notice, and hopefully I can coordinate with the other governors so we can have the same opening period, just the way we had the same closing period.
Shutting down businesses, shutting down gatherings. This is a usage of state power, not big S state, but of the 50 states, the likes of which I've never seen before. And I don't know what really your modern analogous situation would be. They're telling businesses that they just can't open. They're telling people they can't come together. Freedom of assembly, not so much. There are going to be constitutional questions ahead. That is for sure, especially if this drags out for months, which most people expect it to. That doesn't mean it will happen, but those are some of the extreme measures we're talking about here. There are more extreme measures that are probably coming.
We need you right now at the front, and the front is in the places where the coronavirus epidemic is worse.
On a personal note, I want to ask you how you're coping. You went to the gym yesterday, and Twitter lost its mind.
I don't get it, but we'll move on with our lives. The gyms are all closed now, Allison.
Yes, I know that the gyms are closed. Is there any sense that you were late personally to get your arms around what the sacrifice that's required?
No, everyone is going to have to make sacrifice, but as our health commissioner said yesterday, people still are in new ways are going to have to get exercise. Whatever scenario, we're going to tell people how to stay healthy. It may be a walk, it may be a jog, but obviously socially distanced until and unless we get to the point of literally ordering everyone indoors. So this is going in stages. Somehow people are going to have to stay healthy and sane through this, and it's going to take a lot of improvisation for sure.
Yeah, that's for sure. The gym in my building, I live in a very large residential tower in New York City. There's a lot of them here. Gym in my building is closed. I'm wondering if maybe I can sneak in and borrow some free weights, because I went on to Amazon. Guess what? You can't get on Amazon right now at all. Free weights. Can't get them delivered to you. Apparently other people had the same idea I did. Get a couple of barbells. If you got a set of decent barbells at home, you're pretty much good with YouTube. Teach yourself some straightforward exercises. Do some compound lifts with dumbbells. You're good to go. Can't get dumbbells, though, so I guess I'm going to have to start doing some at-home yoga, homage to the sun, or I don't know. I'll figure something out. Push-ups. A lot of push-ups coming my way, I think. or I'm just going to order a lot of Chinese food until this whole thing passes and not worry about the dad bod coming on fast just in time for summer. But no, seriously, there's going to be a change in people's lifestyles and what they're used to that will require quite a bit of adjustment. This is not something that we've dealt with before. This is not something that anybody has any experience with. And I know for a lot of people, their daily, whatever it is, going, if it's going to their local coffee shop, if it's going to the gym every morning, if there's any number of things, going to their favorite diner, these are habits that ground us, that bring us into a sense of normalcy and routine, and these are very powerful things. Psychologically, there's a lot of power in them. So we're going to have to get ready for this. But you notice, and De Blasio, of course, got a little bit of criticism there for, well, De Blasio got criticism for being De Blasio, where he's like, everybody can't go to the gym, but I'm going to go to the gym one last time because I like the YMCA. De Blasio's he's a 2 minutes on the elliptical guy and then does lots of dynamic stretching. I'm sure that's how he rolls. So De Blasio, the president has authorized the deferment of $300 billion of IRS payments. This is one thing I just saw this. This is one thing that we, by the way, need to have happen. All right, the government, if we all are waiting to get paid and we all have to worry about this, we the American people, the government can say everybody gets another 60 days before their checks are due into the IRS. Just put it on our $22 trillion tab for now, and then everybody can pay it off later. I mean, I've been spending the last couple of weeks trying to pull together my taxes because I'm in the media, and, I do private contractor stuff and all over the place. And I'm just like, this is ridiculous. This is what I got to be focused on right now? I got to send them a check every quarter as it is, and now I have to worry about this deadline? It's absurd. So hopefully that will work. By the way, the stimulus plan, they keep talking about stimulus. The only stimulus that's going to have any effect is going to be the stimulus of giving people money to get through the crisis. You're going to see policy disputes arise here. There's some of this is going to bring us all together, and some of this is going to pull us apart. There will be policy disputes that are sharper than what we've seen in a long time because this is real. People are going to be in danger of losing their homes if they fall behind on their mortgage. I mean, how many Americans, especially if they work in the service economy and they have no income coming in, how many Americans can go 6 months without any income? 50% of Americans, according to the polls, would have trouble meeting a $500 emergency obligation. I know. I've been an American as an adult working for years and years who would have had trouble, at least with cash in the bank. I mean, yeah, I could have maybe put it on a credit card to run up some kind of a debt. But I've gone through life paycheck to paycheck. I know what that's like. It's not fun. It's not easy. And really, there are two kinds of people in America in a lot of ways. Those of us who have lived paycheck to paycheck and understand what that's like, understand those stresses. And as I always tell you, there are people that know what it is to show up to a job where they are not appreciated, where no one really cares that they're there, where they could be fired at a moment's notice, and they have to make it work. And there are other people that just kind of, get to do whatever they want. And mumsy and daddy will take care of it, or mumsy and daddy's money. I mean, there's a lot of that with millennials, too. Trust me. Well, there's a lot of that with, I guess, every generation in different ways. But the economic packages, we'll talk about what they're trying to do. One of the big concerns for the market, I mean, the Dow went down, 3,000 points yesterday. A big concern of the market is that the Fed has done what it can do, and everyone thinks, oh, okay, well, the Fed, the cavalry is here, and the Fed rides in and saves the day. Doesn't matter how cheap you make money if people can't spend it because they can't go anywhere because they can't do anything. It doesn't matter how much you lower the borrowing cost if people aren't borrowing because there's nothing to do with the money if you gave it to them. They don't want to do it. We have stopped activity. Economics is activity. That is what this is all about. We have essentially shut down the U.S. economy. I mean, short of hyperinflation or the destruction of the U.S. currency, which is a true nightmare scenario, which, by the way, is something people talk about as a possibility. Short of that, I mean, this is one of the scarier economic situations we could be in where people just aren't doing stuff. People aren't doing stuff. And it also reminds me of how much we are all at the end of this going to owe such a debt of gratitude to the people who make and deliver food. We think of, and we can never give enough respect and love to cops, first responders, firemen. I mean, but everyone knows about their heroics. We don't always appreciate it as much as we should. Everyone knows what they're doing for us day to day, although we do need to be reminded of that. But there are other people here. There are people who are doing really, really critical stuff to keep our lives from feeling like, quite honestly, they are in some state of just complete disrepair, and keep our lives from feeling like they're falling apart. So I think that is something that we should all remember too, that there are people out there who are doing things for us that are not getting, they're not getting the kind of praise, the kind of kudos that many other folks do. And one example of this is, I think this guy was out in California, but this is true anywhere across the country. And he goes by the name Jester. I don't know if that's his real name. It's a cool name, obviously. It reminds me of the guy from Top Gun. But here's what he wrote. And I want you to remember this because, there are people. I live in a very large building in New York with hundreds and hundreds of neighbors. We're all very closely packed in here. And there are individuals who are showing up every day and making sure that this building, that the hot water is on, that the electricity is what it should be, that, there are people who are just making sure those goods and services for home life support continue on. And there are people who are picking up the trash and making sure that some normalcy, and not just normalcy, but things that we really need. I mean, imagine if people just said, you know what, it's not worth it. I don't care about my minimum wage job bagging groceries anymore. We're not gonna keep the grocery store open. Sorry. Now what do we do? I'm gonna try to figure out how to buy direct from some of you can buy direct from the farmer. You probably are the farmer, or you're down the road from him. But a lot of people in the major cities rely on stores to be able to get stuff for us, right? I mean, you see these empty shelves, and it does bring some pretty scary thoughts to mind. What happens when there's just not enough to go around? What happens when all of a sudden the economics affect our ability to get what we need to get day to day? So this is this guy Jester, though. And I wanted to read this to you. This is just on Twitter, but it's gone absolutely mega viral, as it should. And here's what he wrote about this. I'm a garbage man. I can't work from home. My job is an essential city service that must get done. It's a tough job, from getting up pre-dawn to the physical toll it takes on my body, to the monotonous nature of the job. At times, it's hard to keep on going. Right now, though, I am feeling a sense of extra pride and purpose as I do my work. I see the people, my people of my city, peeking out their windows at me. They're scared. We're scared. But we're resilient. Us garbage men are going to keep collecting the garbage. Doctors and nurses are going to keep doctoring and nursing. It's going to be okay. We're going to make it be okay. I love my city. I love my country. Be good to each other, and we'll get through this. He's a garbage man. And he knows that we need him now more than ever. And that goes for those of you listening to this who are truck drivers, making sure that we get milk and eggs to the store. Thank you very much for that. I really do appreciate it. It goes for those who are still delivering mail or work for UPS or work for the Postal Service. It goes for those who work for the airlines who are going through a terrible time right now. But my friends, we all need those airlines to still be around. We can't have all the airlines just shut down and completely run out of all operating expenses and not be there when this thing passes. It's essential, not just for our vacations, for business, for commerce. So people are carrying a heavy load right now. And more than ever, anything you can do to show support, and more importantly, in some ways, well, if you can, to help in some regard. Now is the opportunity. Now is the time for some of these ultra powerful, wealthy corporations, the Googles, the Facebooks, the Amazons. Amazon, I saw, just said they're going to surge up and hire 100,000 people for their warehouses and delivery services, because they know, what people really want right now? Amazon delivery. And they're also that people need jobs. So this is, everybody has to get involved in some way to help us get through this. Everyone has a role to play. And, garbage men do not get the credit, and they do not get from a lot of people, I think, the respect that they are due for making sure that our cities are clean, that they are sanitary, and that they're places you want to live in. And this is true of suburban neighborhoods and rural neighborhoods, too, unless you take the garbage to the dump yourself, but then you don't have garbage men. They're doing a critical job. They continue to do that job, even while everyone else is scared, while their kids are probably at home now, not in school, while their wives are worried about what's going on. They're putting themselves out there, and they're dealing with refuse. They're dealing with, the possibility of contamination and infection themselves. But God bless them. They're keeping our city from just teeming with steaming trash. And, we get another pandemic unless we have garbage men doing their job. So it's very, very important. And we thank them and everybody else who's doing the necessary work here. So I meant to get to this, but I got sidetracked by the economics and by the announcement of where we are right now and what the administration's package is to try to help deal with the economic pain. De Blasio, before he was asked by CNN about his decision to make one last trip to the gym, de Blasio also mentioned the possibility of shelter in place as an order. Play clip 19.
Last night ordered a shelter-in-place edict for the whole Bay Area. Right. Would New York consider something?
We're absolutely considering that. I mean, right now we have taken a series of steps to reduce the number of people who are circulating around, get people to telecommute, obviously social distancing, closing the schools, which was particularly painful, closing the bars and restaurants. But we're going to look at all other options, and it could get to that for sure. It could get that for the whole country.
Could get to that for the whole country, he says. Shelter in place. Do you know what's going on in Italy right now? I've told you about the shortages of doctors, ICU beds, ventilators. We've discussed that. Something else that's going on in Italy, though, in Lombardy, Milan, northern Italian cities and provinces. If you need to leave your house, you have to go online and fill out a permission form, and you have to carry that permission form with you. If you want to go outside, if you want to go anywhere, you can do it for the grocery store, for the pharmacy, basically it. That's where we are right now in Italy. That's already happening. Shelter in place in New York City would mean everyone is on lockdown. Everyone has to stay in their own space and can only leave for essential goods and services. This is concerning. And beyond that, I have to say, this isn't going to last, folks. At some point, there will be a revolt against all these orders. At some point, you'll have too many servers at restaurants, too many bartenders, too many airline employees, too many, I can't even name all, arena employees, all these different things that are shut down. Too many people saying, my life is being destroyed. Maybe we want to take the risk. I'm not saying this is the path or this is the thing to do. I am just saying I believe that we will rapidly, unless we see this horrific surge of very serious cases. Remember, India, which has 1 billion people, 125 confirmed cases of coronavirus. And they wouldn't be able to hide it if it got into the broader population because they'd have a lot of dead people very quickly. India only has 125 cases. 1 billion people in India. What's going on there? So we don't have an endless tolerance for these rules and regulations. And one thing that I think is going to happen is that the government is going to continue to insist that we listen to them on these dictates and that if they tell us, for example, shelter in place. What happens if the government says shelter in place and I'm saying, no, I'm going to go see my girlfriend. I'm going to live my life. Sorry. What happens when the government starts sending in, as they already are in New York, the NYPD to arrest people, first a summons, but then they can arrest them for gatherings of more than 50. And I think now they're going to make it gatherings of more than 10 is the CDC guidance. What happens when people say, I will not comply? We're heading for a very combustible period unless the government really gets this stuff right and is providing a lot more help than it is hindrance in dealing with this. And we're not sure which side of it they're gonna fall on quite yet.